is good. You just, I mean, that's the point of the podcast, is bringing people together. Just to intro the podcast, this is the Shop Class Podcast. Tonight we're doing a safety episode. But before we get started, people are just joining the room. And as we're joining, we've got some amazing people entering the room. We've got Pete Ardima's shop. We got Greg Kerwin's over there. Greg, turn your phone horizontal. That'll help out.
So this is something that Kevin over here in the blue, he's doing some software development right now, some other cat file, but this is something he recently developed. This is a section of a cylinder head that he's perfected and basically started with a 3D model that he printed, and then he milled it in foam on the mill. And this is the version that they milled out of aluminum, out of billet. And so this is a full functional cylinder head, but they use it for boat testing. And then the goal is to then cast them like this one here.
Oh, wow.
So what?
Just people are entering, Greg, people are entering the room. We got some special guests coming in. Jimmy Duress is in the house. Jimmy on the East Coast is kind of like, he's the mayor of Makerville.
Awesome.
Basically, if I were to describe him in a nice way, basically, he does a lot of work bringing people together. He's real inspiring, and he's got shows on TV and YouTube and whatnot. And then Jimmy, how you doing? Thanks for coming in.
You're muted, Jim.
Oh, he's muted. Sorry. You just got to hit the button or something. I don't know.
There it is. Sorry, I'm not used to this interface. Whose shop is that? Thank you guys for having me. Whose shop is that beautiful shop with the cool cars?
Okay,
Yeah.
so Greg, do you want to introduce it? Go ahead.
Here's another project they're working on.
Wow, Jimmy's amazed.
Well, let me tell you what shop that is. So that's in California. That's kind of San Diego area, and it's called Pete Ardima, and he has, I think, over 30 world records for fastest vehicles. They build their engines from scratch.
Wow.
And then they go out to the Bonneville Salt Flats. If you've ever seen the movie The World's Fastest Indian, which is not about Indians. Okay. So these are the guys who continue that type of like hardcore, nose to the grindstone, never give up type of stuff.
Wow.
And they keep going back. And so they're getting ready. Greg, where are they going within a week? Is that right?
So this Saturday, Scott Getz called a few minutes ago, driving Lakester. So Lakester, like a streamline, has the wheels are outside of the vehicle, so not tucked in. And he's got to go 228, almost like 229 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They will be the 2023 champions. Their team.
Wow.
Way on the points work. So it's not their fastest record, it's slow speed for them, but it's a small build out of sheet metal.
That's amazing.
And like right now, that's the 12-cylinder built. But yeah, these guys are like, man, this is like real stuff.
Yeah. So you're breaking up a little bit, but what do you think the secret sauce is? How do they have so many records?
Okay, their secret sauce is 4-valve overhead cam, volumetric efficiency. So they're able to really dial in a cylinder head flow that can flow a lot, move a lot of air. And so a lot of these guys are in the old school push rod. They got Hemi or their Dodge Demon or their Chevy 350 or the big block, but they're all about technology with really just kind of strategizing. And I think I may have told this before to a couple of these guys in this group tonight, but what's unique about Pete and Kevin is, I don't know if you guys, Pete's going to be 83 here pretty soon. So this guy's like a true legend hot rodder. He spends 7 days a week in the shop, but he doesn't discriminate against any car manufacturer or design. So if you're a car guy, a lot of our car guys are partial to their brand, whether it's going to be Ford, Chevy, or Chrysler, right? But Pete is a different guy. He'll say, guys will be having a conversation about their Hemi, but then he'll butt in and say, "But Honda has the best flowing cylinder." so he kind of stumped. So he'll look at a Honda cylinder head, take that technology, put it onto a good bottom end they make, and they make a ton of horsepower, and they prove themselves almost every time. There's sometimes.
Wow.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, a lot of safety. What they got to do, this the driver Scott talking to me. I know that's the topic of your conversation tonight. Safety. Driver Scott was talking to me. He's like, "Hey, we got to figure out if we put a system in the car that can detect a fire in the engine bay." And so, if you guys know how you can do that, let us know. He wants to know when he's going down the track at 300 miles an hour, the freaking car's on fire.
Yeah, how would you tell? Because the engine's producing so much heat. How would you tell if there's a fire? Because that engine is on fire.
So that's easy. In the boating industry, what do they do? What do they have on their display on the yachts? They have cameras in the engine bay, right? So you almost need camera so the driver can kind of just scan over to the monitor and see what's going on.
But if you're driving the boat and the boat's doing 250 miles an hour, you might not have time to look at the display.
Fire burns slower when you're driving in that case, right? So hopefully.
Maybe they didn't drive fast enough, right? They got to go faster to put the fire out.
Yeah.
So Ron, you guys are hilarious. So here's Pete. Any ideas from the group on early fire detection besides cameras? I know you mentioned that. Is there?
Oh, geez. I mean, in a closed environment, you could do some sort of a smoke detector. When in my shop, we don't use smoke detectors. We use heat detectors, because if we use smoke, it'll go off, because we're always producing smoke because we have welding and we have dust. So you can't use those typical smoke detector. And then we use heat detector, so rapid rise of heat. But the engine's hot, so that would be very difficult. I actually don't know. Does anybody else have any ideas here?
Might have to be a spectrum, like a light spectrum thing. Like, what spectrum does flames give off, or flames that you guys are dealing with, whatever fuel system you're working on, and whatever that flame burns at, it probably has to be some kind of that's that light spectrum, or whatever kind of frequency spectrum that's letting off. Then that can be an alarm somehow.
Oh, they have that in them.
So yeah, somebody said that motorhomes have protection on them in the engine bay, or in the chassis, or in the house.
In the engine bay, yeah, because they're rear engine, the pushers and all this stuff for safety.
All right.
What would be
the jet engines use thermocouples?
And
that would
go ahead.
trip an alarm.
Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead, Greg. What'd you say?
I think Adam mentioned a thermocouple, and that kind of makes sense, because that's if you had a calibrated thermocouple, that would trigger an alarm of some sort. I don't know. So.
Yeah.
We do have the fire the fireman in the group is here. We should ask him. Nick, what do you think, man? What should we do?
I have no clue. I don't deal with vehicles.
You put them out.
As far as, I just put them out.
Cell phone when I get back.
Jimmy, you got any ideas?
I just think a lot of heat probes that could tell you what the heat is on a typical run that's not on fire, and then program it to go outside of that parameter. So just the several heat probes. You'd need maybe 7 or 8 of them in the bay. Run it a few times, get your average heat, and then anything over that is going to be obviously an emergency.
Right. We're going to do a little net, find out from one of the tech inspectors of safety.
So Ron, I don't want to steal any of your show, but before Scotty heads out, I know your topic is safety, and everything that's got to do this weekend is about safety. So I don't know if you guys put him on a spot, or if you have any questions, or
from
your
absolutely. Well, do you? Oh, so what kind of safety do you deal with?
Well, the most important thing for us is making the pass. So to keep the tires, flat and that kind of speed. And after that, it's just all the onboard. You got a cage, 2 fireballs, onboard fire system. And we have a, what's that switch called? The rollover switch?
Inertia switch.
Inertia switch too. So if it goes upside down, it turns off the fuel pump.
Master's battery cut out.
And your clothing and your helmet and gloves and everything. Hans device holds your neck restraint so you can't jerk your spine.
That's how, what's his name, passed, right? The NASCAR driver. Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah. And
well,
we're safe. It's for, we have our record is over 200, so we're required to have 2 safety officials do the inspection, pre-race inspection.
And now 2 parachutes.
And 2 parachutes, yeah.
You want to tell them what happened? Parachute
Well, yeah,
situation
we had
about
a
a year
little
ago?
problem. We had a unapproved lanyard on the chute. And I knew the chute was too big because we'd been racing it for a while, the chute itself. So on a canopy, it jerked you pretty good. So I'm going 220, 228, 223, something like that.
Yeah, I thought it was 230.
I go through the trap and I'm doing the delayed pull because I want to bleed off some speed. Well, when I jerked it, the chute came off the car because our lanyard was unapproved. And by that time, you get on the brakes don't work at those speeds. And then the end of the track's coming up on me, which there's nothing to hit. It's just a coned off area. But I did a 180 and backed that thing right into we call it the back door, which is our safety perimeter.
whoa.
You go online, you can look it up. Greg did the
Yeah.
video. It's a good
It
video.
took you well over a mile to stop, right? It was.
Follow the approved safety equipment guidelines.
Yeah. So the chute ripped off the car.
Did
What broke that released the chute?
the lanyard that was holding it to the chassis, that on the other end of it goes to the lanyard on the chute itself.
Got it. Okay.
The chute
and what was that rated for? Was it close or was it not even close?
I don't know. It was just not good. It was.
They have a timeout time. You're only supposed to use them for a certain amount of time.
And ours was not proper from the start. Nobody caught it. The officials didn't even catch it. So it was like a 3-way goof up.
All right. Wow. And, I've done some racing and I know that, things happen really fast. This was at Bonneville. Did you have time to recover?
El Mirage.
Yeah.
We recovered. You got to watch that video. We went back and went through tech inspection. I just asked the official, I said, well, can we make another pass? He said, well, I got to go talk to someone. And we fixed it and went out there and they kept the race day open. We were the last ones to run there. And our connection for the door, the trap door on the parachute rattled and popped at 3/4 track. So we were denied the record. We were on another roll to get it.
Oh, man.
Ron, look on their YouTube page. On the YouTube page, there is a video. If you look under the videos, it's called like parachute failure.
It is, yeah.
And you might be able.
I'm looking for it. Is it on your YouTube channel?
It's on it. It's under videos. You have to look under all the videos, and then it's called parachute failure. It was about half ago, but.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to take a look for it. Hey, what other stories of failure you got? Because I think that's how we learn. Oh, did he leave?
I could, I was just going to share. I don't know if Greg's still there, but Greg, that AEM setup you guys have, you guys should be able to run some temperature sensors, maybe 4 throughout that engine bay. And like, who was it? Jimmy, I think, recommended taking some baseline data and then set a parameter in that AEM to set a warning to the driver if the temperature at any one of those sensors goes outside of that parameter.
Yeah. All right. I was just looking for the video. Say that one more time, Omar.
So the AEM setup that you have should accommodate 4 additional temperature sensors, and you should be able to put those temperature sensors in, 4 different spots around the engine bay. And if you take some baseline data, like Jimmy was saying, you could set it up so that when it goes I don't know, 15, 20% outside of that parameter, that AEM will flash a warning to the driver saying, hey, high heat in the engine bay. And then Scotty can make a decision whether or not he needs to release his fire suppression system.
Wow. Yeah, that would be cool. The AEM display is if those who don't know, it's it kind of mounts on your dash and you can program it to do whatever you what other sensors you want, and it can trigger warnings and stuff like that. It's kind of like a custom display. I was thinking along the same lines. What if there was a sensor that you didn't rely on the electronics or like a thermocoupler or something like that? What if it was literally just a wire that was thin enough or a material that was set to a temperature? Isn't it similar to like the sprinklers? It goes over a certain temperature and then it releases or opens a switch that could open a relay.
I feel like you're talking about like maybe like a fusible link type setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then it's mechanical.
Right. And because you're going so fast in electronics, like, you don't want to rely on that. 100%.
No, that totally makes sense. So if you use a type of fusible link and let's say the circuit opens, and then that would trigger a relay, which would trigger a warning light. I don't know if I would have it automatically release the fire suppression system, because you don't want to release that unless you're confident there's a fire.
Yes. You'd want like a warning so that you make a decision.
Right.
Man, these drivers have to deal with so much. Deal with this parachutes and everything. They can't even just hit the brakes. Pretty amazing tech that you have to deal with just to break a record.
So Ron, back that up a little bit. You can see the run, and then you'll see where the parachute fills, and you can watch Scott, trying to stop, pumping the brakes. You're right.
Okay, is it right about here?
Yeah, right when the car gets pushed off, you'll see the whole run.
Oh, okay.
Maybe and keep going until
you'll see me grab for the lever on the dash.
Yeah, right about there.
And then
there's the run. This is El Mirage.
And
where's that located? Here they go. Video segment.
Audio though.
Oh, put up the audio? Okay.
Like this.
30 miles an hour. Let's turn on live audio. Over 200.
Oh, it's going back to.
I see him pumping the brakes. Oh, look at that. He's out of control. Doing a 180.
Fire pop. He's hell out of there.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah, man.
There you
that
go.
Was wild.
Ice right there. That's the Hans vice. So
wow, way to start the safety episode with a 250 mile an hour spin out.
So I have a question for Scotty. Is that allowed?
Yeah, go for it, Omar.
So Scotty, my students, I've shared this video with my students. They always ask, why doesn't he just hit the brakes at 200? What happens if you hit the brakes at 200?
Well, I'm trying to hit them. They don't work too.
Yep. It's not the same. Yeah, they're useless at that speed. And
the tire.
Yeah, pretty well.
When it popped that tire, you can hear it in the video. It goes. Phew.
That's wild. Well, that's a good thing that didn't roll over. Were you expecting it to roll?
No, of course not. No, I just backed it in.
Wow, this is amazing. Any other thoughts from the group Kevin, what do you think, man? What would you do to suppress the potential of this happening? Wait, don't you have 2 chutes? How come one let go and you didn't have a second one?
Recommended but not required, I think, for the class.
There are 2 now.
Now there's 2. That's what.
Yeah.
Oh
There-
man.
Threshold, right?
Well, we
It's
should
kind of a
have 2
judgment
shoots,
call.
but you know,
Yeah.
required.
Yeah.
But
So they
recommended.
require 2 chutes if you go
But
300.
it's recommended. I said we need 2 until we wiped out. Then we got 2.
Yeah.
Live and learn. That's why we're doing this episode. I want to talk to everybody. I want to hear how you learn from failure. It's basically the
That
only
too.
way.
Wait for that. Get 2. If you're doing that, so get 2 automatic.
Yeah. I mean, remember when airbags first came out, we only had it on the driver's wheel. Now we got like 50 freaking car.
Oh, I always found that funny. Like you like when you'd have your girlfriend in the car with you, and you'd be like, "Yeah, I bought the car, but I didn't care enough about you to buy the second airbag. I just got one." That was ridiculous. Of course, you want 2 in the front. Anyway, well, this is pretty cool. Greg, I really appreciate you letting us enter like a different world. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to just let you guys carry on. I'm going to just be all ears for the next few minutes and let you guys
Hey,
carry on.
thanks a lot. Scott, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Best of luck out there. I hope you guys break the record. How do we follow along?
Well, hopefully we'll have a video posted Sunday night or Monday morning.
But they can go on live stream.
Yeah, Gearhead Hobbies, it's called. Gearhead Hobbies will be doing a live stream of the event.
It came through pretty good last time.
Yeah, it comes through. But we'll have a video posted probably in a few days after the race.
Okay.
So.
And you always do a good job. If anybody is curious about watching any of those videos, Greg Kerwin is supervisor of the San Diego district area automotive shops. He does a really good job. He also wrenches. He's the supervisor of supervisors. He's the supervisor you want in your district.
I've got Omar. Omar's he's one of the instructors. He's our flagship instructor over at.
Oh, all right. Well, then we'll get the truth from Omar. I'm just propping you up there.
Yeah.
I only tell the truth.
Yeah.
And Omar's brother helps us too, Rick.
Oh, that's cool. So I'm going to put the link in for this for Greg's YouTube channel, and it's all about Pete Ardima's group there where they break records, and it's really an in-depth fly on the wall. It's like if you wish you were there, Greg's there to film the whole thing. It's like amazing.
Yeah, the stuff has been great having Greg on board with us. Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I put it in the chat there. All right, that's cool, Scott.
Right.
Thanks so much, and Greg, and we're gonna talk about wood shop and metal shop next.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. While we're on the automotive topic, and we got Omar here. Omar, thanks for joining in. You're coming in from California. You're in the San Diego area as well.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I know we've talked in the past, and I know we have a mutual friend, Eddie Boriswitz. He does the land speed racing as well on the EV side of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been wanting to do this in my schedule. I teach daytimes at the high school, and then I teach nights here at Miramar College, and I have 4 kids, and I want to stay married. So my time is, I don't always have this window of time to pop in with you guys, but this looks really cool. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, safety. You want me to start with a little story or
yeah, I think honestly the best way, like that parachute story really got us thinking. And pretty obvious, you need 2 parachutes or at least the lanyard. Now they know they have to have the lanyard up to scratch. But you never know until you do it, so if you got a story, I feel like the stories really lead to the next thing, so if you got a story for us, then we'll learn from your mistakes, go for it.
Yeah, I got a simple one that just has popped in my head, and you got hundreds of stories, but I think the simple one that I never would have thought, I had my old shop, high school shop. We had a a tire rack that was above the roll-up doors. So you can put your wheels and tires up there. And we used a ladder to get up there. And the ladder we had was rated at, I don't know, 210 pounds or something, and never thought twice about it. And one of my students was helping clean up. And I said, hey, why don't we put those tires up on the rack there? And he was a football player, weighed about, 185, 190, big kid, and strong enough to do it. And I had some wheels off of a 3/4 ton truck, wheels and tire assemblies, they're 70 pounds. And he got on that ladder and the ladder failed. Kid went down, hurt his back. Never crossed my mind that would be a thing. And then it shut us down actually for a couple of weeks. All of the CTE programs had to close down. Everybody had to do ladder training. So, in that training, we learned that like one of the highest rates of fatality in the nation is ladder falls. So, so it's pretty crazy to know. So I would say, make sure you're aware of the weight capacity on your ladders. And if there are any signs of, wear and tear, it's not worth it, man. It's not worth it at all to fall off even a 4 foot or 6 foot. It's too far to fall, especially in your older age, right?
No kidding. That's interesting. You just kind of like do stuff and things happen. I can relate. Seems simple. But when we get to my story, I just got whacked in the head last week. I probably needed it, but I got whacked in the head by a piece of a pallet jack that we were in the middle of repairing. And man, did that hurt,
Ron, the thing is, with talking back what Omar said about having the kids on the ladders, like in my shop at my school, I don't let any kids go up on any ladders. Like, it's just period. Like, we don't go over any of that safety. We don't do any of that OSHA stuff, just because that's not what our program includes. I just will not have a kid go on a ladder. I just don't want to take the responsibility of a kid falling off, something falling on them dropping something on someone else. So it's a preventative measure on my behalf. And I try not to stack stuff too high, but there is things that are above your head that you have to get, but I'll just go up and get it.
Yeah. I'm not so good on ladders, but someone's got to do it. Luckily we don't really have anything above us, so there's no really reason. We'll go around the room real quick. Kaywit, do you guys ever have to reach up to get anything above you guys? Or are you kind of like one floor, kind of like me?
I take Tim's view on this one. I don't let the kids go up on ladders. I go up on ladders I'm fixing dust collection stuff, or we have a bus bar where I got to move some outlets around. That's all on me. Definitely there's nothing I would put the students up there on. Yeah, it just doesn't. They'll talk a great game. They're like, I do this with my dad all the time after school on the weekends, blah blah blah, all summer. It doesn't matter. They're usually talking that up anyway, and then they're you just don't need that risk. It's if you want to take it yourself, that's fine, but don't with the students, unless it's you're training, you're doing that OSHA 30 or whatever, or OSHA 10, and you're training specifically for ladders. It's take the variable out of there. Don't even risk it. You're there to cut wood. Don't worry about ladders. Unless it's like a hardcore CTE program where that's what you're going to cover. It's a different story.
Wait,
like the buildings trade programs like we did with Matt out in Taylorville, we were up on top of the scaffolding, and I know he has kids go up on scaffolding, and so does Frank. I'm sure that's all part of their safety program in regards to covering that. But in a traditional wood shop, we are not covering ladders.
Right. Wait, so does anybody here use ladders with their students? Anybody in the crowd here? All right, so it's not popular.
Since that accident, I do have a 4 foot step ladder for getting up and down the alignment machine. Essentially is the main purpose for that one.
Got it. Let's get into shop safety. Let me ask a question. Jimmy, do you have a lot of time, or you got to get going soon?
I got a couple of minutes, but I have a ladder
Okay.
story if you want to hear a ladder story.
Yeah, let's do it. Or your hand might be on the mic. It's a little bit muted for some reason. Oh,
How's that
yeah.
sound?
Yeah, much better. Much better. Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is just something to be when you never know what's going to come your way ever. When you least expect it, I was pulling wood out of the eave of my garage, and I was standing on top of a 6-foot ladder with my feet on either side. So the ladder was an A-frame, and I was on top of that A-frame with my legs on either side of the second to top rung.
Okay.
And I was pulling 10-foot boards out of the eave of my garage out to the grass, and I was pulling them off over my head slowly, and then I would like kind of get them past me and let them fall into the grass. And I grabbed one particular board, and I'm looking at what I thought was black mold between the two boards. And as I'm pulling it out, it's all on the board, and then it all starts falling into my face. And I thought it was black mold, but it was just millions of black ants, and they fell all over me.
Oh.
And I panicked, and it was obviously not a good place to panic. And I panicked and just I threw the board and I started patting myself. And the whole entire assembly and me just went timber like a tree. And I just fell completely backwards and landed flat on my back. And I looked up at the sky and I said, I could still feel my feet and my hands. And I waited for a second and I jumped up and I was like, wow. And I was covered with black ants and I thought I was paralyzed. So in a moment's notice, everything can go completely left. So it's really important to take things slow. And that was my ladder story. And then this is my second ladder story, which happened about 5 hours ago.
Oh my
I
God.
have an extension ladder that I've been using at the restoration of the graveyard house. And I'm up and down it 100 times a day. And I extended it up. And as I began to climb on it, it didn't lock because I was in a little bit of a rush. It didn't lock. So when I stepped off of the regular ladder, the one that was on the ground, onto the extension part, and it pulled and shut and pulled it right off of where it was leaning. So it went from leaning and it shut down and immediately fell into a different part. So it didn't fall completely down. I wasn't up that high, but it pulled down and then fell against something else. So it didn't fall completely down, but it was very scary because as it started falling, I was prepared to kind of get my teeth against one of the rungs, but it never went all the way. It just went from, say, a 30-degree angle down to like a 20-degree angle because it stopped against something else. It went down maybe 2 steps until it finally did lock.
Oh my
So now
God.
I got to oil all the parts on that ladder to make sure that as I go up and down, and then obviously I just need to visually check that it was hooked. I didn't check. I went up and it felt locked, and then I just jumped up on it. So those are my 2 ladder stories. Now that first one kept me safe until today. Now I got to make sure I'm safe for another 10 years.
Isn't that funny that we have to learn these lessons over and over again?
Yeah.
So what do you think the lesson learned is? It is simply to slow down in those scenarios?
Yeah. Well, now I know, just being a half-assed country boy. I'm looking at Nick. Nick's gonna laugh at me. That I'm a half-assed New York City country boy. Is that when
You're a city slicker, no?
Yeah, when you're pulling boards out, just always look for bugs. If you don't want them in your mouth, I mean, that is, who cares if they're there? You just don't want them in your mouth if you're pulling them off of an eave over your head. So now I'm much more cautious to look for bugs when I have wood stored over my head. And yeah, I'm gonna make extra sure that my ladder is locked on my extension ladder, those hooks.
Oh man.
But
Wow.
I try to be very, very conscious of ladders, and there are times where I decide not to do it at all. I just look around and I was like, you know what? Whatever needs to be done that high up, I'm just going to live with it. I'm not going to do it unless I hire an expert. And that comes to painting the house on the second floor. I have a ladder that is, I guess it's super long. And there was only a couple times when I was younger that I went to the very top of that ladder, but I would never, it's so heavy, it's hard to even move. I would never go to the top of that ladder, not at my age. My dad's close friend, he was one of my dad's closest friend. I called him my uncle. He fell off a ladder and died at about 75 years old.
Oh wow.
And so my uncle Matty, he died from falling off a ladder. So it's
Wow.
definitely front and center of my mind, all these ladder stories. And then I have 2 but that's 2 out of going up and down a ladder millions of times. So I feel very lucky, but I know how dangerous the ladders could be and being up high. I definitely I have to repair stuff on the roof of my house. I'll just hire somebody that is better
We
skilled
usually
at walking
have
on the roof.
we usually have Peter Mollinaire usually joins us. He did some roofing. Did anybody here do any roofing?
I have reluctantly, but I'll never do it now. Not at this age.
Yeah, it's not worth it,
No, I'll just hire an expert.
Yeah, that's amazing. Interesting. So a couple things we learned. So from Omar, there's a weight limit to the ladder. And from Jimmy, you got to just slow down because you're going to get a surprise.
If you could get a
ladder.
surprise. The funny thing was I was looking up at it and I'm like, wow, where's all that soot coming from? Because it looked like soot. I was like, what is that? And it was brand new wood that I stored in there in the beginning of the winter. Now here it is the spring, and I'm pulling it out. And over the winter, it might have been there for probably 2 seasons, but somehow between the 2 pieces of wood, a big black ant nest was developing. And I was really curious. I was like, where did all that black mold come from? And then all of a sudden I realized it was moving bugs falling onto my face and then down my shirt.
God, Jimmy, this is like from a movie or something. And
It's
what's your
creepy.
problem? Why are you disturbing their house? That's where they live, man.
Yeah, well, they made a house in my house, so they have to go.
That's amazing.
I have a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
And this isn't class related, but just like class, I always try to relate what's going on to outside of class. So I was doing my gutters, and the front of my house is pretty high up. I had my extension ladder out, and that front area is all mulched and garden. And as I'm going up, it felt solid as I started going up, and the higher I got, I started sinking into the mulch, and the ladder starts going. And, the ladder is just resting on the gutter. So you've got no friction at all, because you got, the gutter slick, and then your surface area is like nothing. And it started going, and I went with it. And luckily, my feet were probably about 6 feet off the ground. And as the ladder went, I kind of jumped off the opposite way, because if I rode with it, I was going to drop about another 10 feet. And so, I was pretty good, but one of the things for me was I immediately went and bought 2 adaptions to the ladder. One is it's a foot that you can add, and it's adjustable. You can put it to either side, and that allows you to stabilize it. And then I don't know the name of it, but it's shaped like a U, and it hooks onto the top of the ladder. And that helps, because then it kind of, the arms of it, rest on the shingles of the roof and kind of locks it in. So even if it started to go, it can't really go anywhere. And then even if you're using it on the side of a house, instead of resting on an area the width of the ladder, now your area is much wider, so it's more stable. So those 2 things, and I had wanted to get those, but I was being cheap. And then after that, I said, man, I could have really got messed up. So how much are you saving if you got a hospital bill, a broke leg? And so that was my takeaway, was to not cheap out, buy the attachments and extra stuff. If I would have done that from the get-go, that wouldn't have happened.
Wow. So the footing is a consideration when you're putting that ladder down. Could we go to Nick for ladders? He's a fireman. Isn't that kind of like they're like a ladder and this is it. And a Dalmatian, right? This is like
fire service. We use attic ladders, which fold up and then open up into, attic spaces to get into the attics. And we have 24-foot, 35-foot ladders. So the 35-foot is 3 sections, and you have to extend it with at least 4 people. And those at least 3 stay at the base, footing it while you're climbing. And then most of the time we're doing chimney fires at that point, at those lengths. So, we train with them and everything. But as far as school goes, I used to let them use the 6-foot ladders here and there, like if we were working on sheds or whatever when we had our construction class. But then again, during that time, I was also training them to use them. And then with stage crew, when we fly lights and deal with our house lights, we use scaffolding, but most of the time it's just the adults going up, and on the stage lights they fly down, so they're at head level. So
Gotcha. I just want to say hi to Logan, and Noah's in the house. Noah's a regular. He does a buildings and trades program down in Virginia, and Logan's new. How you doing, Logan? Oh, you gotta unmute it.
Yeah, I gotta hit the right place.
Board or something. Sorry, go ahead.
So I had two things here. So funny story. First, we used to have a firefighter program at the school I teach at. They had to close it down because the instructor did not do a great job. But we used to watch those kids go up the ladder, and I would be terrified every time watching them go up, because they would have them haul up the lineman bucket, and I was just like, this is such a bad idea. But when I was a kid, I was in a community theater, and my mother would do lights on one of the big, like 25-foot ladders. And Jimmy, she used to stand on both sides of it and shimmy it across the stage, putting up lights. And my mother's, it was funny because my mother is 5 feet tall, and she would hop it and shimmy it. And all you would hear is my dad yelling across the theater at her that she was being an idiot because she didn't want to climb back down.
Oh my God.
And Jimmy,
I snopes at that point.
Oh my God, it was terrifying. Jim, one of my worst experiences was I went kayaking one time. I was doing a science experiment, and I had to stop. I went up this really narrow inlet in Irondequoit Creek. I'm in Rochester, New York. And it just kept getting narrower and narrower. So I stood up, I found a little dry area. I said, okay, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to turn my canoe over, and I'm just around, and I'm kayaking. I'm just standing there for a second. All of a sudden I'm like, and I looked down, and I was standing in an anthill, and the ants were swarming up my legs. And I just started, because they start biting, and I got in my kayak, and I'm like trying to get away. And then I'm feeling underneath my life vest. Ants on you is the worst. They're just everywhere, man. So sorry about that. So I teach two things. So I used to teach living environment, AP bio, that type of stuff. I was an optician in the Navy 30 years ago, and about 11, 12 years ago, I got the opportunity to start a whole new program where I teach kids to make eyeglasses. And we make eyeglasses, we get doctors to volunteer, and I give them out to kids in our district. So
get out of here, really?
Yeah. Like
that's a unique program.
It is there. I know of one other program where they teach kids to make glasses, but they don't work with doctors, and they don't get the kids in my district. I live in one of the highest per capita poverty areas in the nation. Although I was stationed out in San Diego for boot camp and Corpsman School way back in the day. We have one of the highest poverty areas, so we give out glasses to kids for free. And each year I give out about anywhere between 800 and 1,200 pairs of glasses to kids. And so I created this whole program, and this year, so long story short, New York State likes my program. They give us money, and we get to sort of give that out to different programs. So a couple years ago, we started a home maintenance and repair class. And this year I started co-teaching because the teacher who teaches it wanted to do more woodworking, and he doesn't have that experience. And then he also wants, his schedule was messed up, so they needed someone to cover it. So this year I'm actually teaching a woodworking class, and I have a woodworking club after school. So I'm really just getting into the tech area of it. I still feel like it's so different teaching a CTE class compared to science. Like when I was teaching, I could teach DNA. I'm like, all right, guys, we're doing DNA today, and tomorrow I'm going to teach you about, I don't know, reproduction. But it's like you got a kid here, you got a kid there, and you're trying to.
Well, this is what I say about this is like, this is like, you could read about bicycles, but this is where you actually ride the bicycle. This is where the rubber meets the road. Failure is possible and very likely. So you have to keep people safe. That's why that's probably why this is such an attractive topic, because we've all got stories of, you know, things happening and whatnot. Yeah, Logan, thanks for joining. That's great, man. That's great that you're doing that. And I might need some glasses. Actually, I definitely need glasses. I use the these guys are laughing because they know I use the cheater lens in my welder because I was welding like crap. And I finally
it works really well. I have one of those.
They work so well, you know.
Yeah.
I usually have like 6 different pairs on me. These are my readers. And I have, so it's funny because I have these readers that are good for me to see the keyboard, do stuff. But when I have to actually see like screws for optical stuff and get really close, I have a second pair that are a little bit stronger so I can actually see. Other times I'm like,
I was going to say, I got to jump because I have a dinner appointment, but I just wanted to say one thing about safety is that as safe as you constantly can be, there's always going to be an accident. And I think just being aware of the possibilities of that accident when you're in the situation is really important. You could do your best to avoid it, but something like ants could fall in your mouth where you least expect it. How can you prepare for that, right? When you look at ants and it looks like it's mold and you didn't expect it to fall into your face, and then all of a sudden all of that is moving in your mouth. So the point I'm making is that safety is something to always be conscious of, and just know something somewhere is going to come at you, like a snake bite. You just got to be prepared for it and try and mitigate it and not let it get the best of you if you can avoid it at all.
Yeah.
But sometimes somebody just loses control and drives through your living room, you know. You just have to be prepared for what to do next if you're still capable. No, but when I see that happen, those type of accidents, I was like, that poor sucker was just watching Fox News and now he's underneath the car.
Oh man. No, I appreciate it, Jimmy. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys.
It's basically fail safe, learning through failure. Jimmy, you're the best, man. Thanks for doing what you do, and I appreciate you joining in.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming to Maker Camp. Bye, guys.
So those who are not familiar with Jimmy DiResta, just throw on some YouTube, and he's got some great videos teaching people how to make stuff. He's like an endless maker. He's a leader. He's a leader in the maker space. He's kind of the mayor of Makerville here in the New York area. And he's on TV. What's the name of the show, Nick? It's called Making Fun. Is that right?
Yeah, Netflix.
I haven't actually seen it yet. I heard it's a pretty good show. They let the kids decide what they're going to build, which is kind of cool. You know, what a fun thing to do. I'll just put it up on the screen for a sec. And then let's get back into the stories. I think I want to go back over to Omar for automotive. Anything more automotive related, that would be pretty cool.
I'm gonna follow Jimmy DiResta. So it's DIRESTA. Jimmy's YouTube.
Yeah, DIRESTA. Yeah.
Wow, 2 million subscribers. That's pretty impressive. That's cool.
Only.
Oh, it's just you.
He's only got 2 million. So.
Yeah, no big deal. He's only on TV that here, you know, and he joined in, which was so cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, they just do crazy stuff, you know. That's probably his shop that they're doing stuff.
Yeah, that is his shop.
Ah, okay. This is the show. There he is. But you know, he's a super nice guy, and he's always willing to lend a hand, and I think that he's very inviting and very supportive of the shop teachers and the makers. So yeah, definitely follow him, and you learn a lot from him. Definitely, 100%. Pretty cool.
Yeah, he's really cool. He's really open. He'll talk to anybody. You can ask him questions. You can really just spend a couple minutes and pick his brain and ask him questions, and he's real responsive with answering different things too. So it's great. It's great to have him part of this.
He's like a down-to-earth celebrity, in the right space, the space we need him in, So, Omar, tell us give us another automotive story.
Oh man, so many. Let's see. So I had a project in my early years. I don't have as many now as I'm older because I'm a little more proactive and the students are a little softer and not as courageous to explore and try things. But we were working on a project where I had to replace the gear on a flex plate. So for those of you who may not know, the flex plate is the part that connects the crankshaft to the torque converter. And it has a gear that goes around it so that when you turn the starter motor engages and turns the engine. Well, the gear was stripped out, so I had the kids pull the transmission, they pulled the flex plate, and we ordered a new gear. Well, to get the gear on, you got to heat it up with the torch. So I had the rosebud going, and I'm heating this sucker up and getting it really cherry red. And then you got to quickly, with some pliers, set it on the flex plate and line it up before it cools off. And so we have a saying, and the saying is, my brother ran a fab shop since he was 16 years old. And the saying we use is hot metal looks like cold metal, right? So as soon as it's not glowing cherry red anymore, it looks like cold metal. Well, we got this flex plate gear on, or the flywheel gear on, and it stopped glowing. And I turned off the rosebud, and my students were standing around watching. And a kid comes up to me, and this is my early years, so I was a little more sarcastic than I am now. And he says, "Well, can I touch it? Is it still hot?" I said, "Sure, go ahead and touch it." And the dang kid touched it, and man, that sizzled his hand so good. And everybody looked at him like he was the dumbest person in the world. But as a teacher, I probably should have said, "Hey, this is going to be hot for about 30 minutes. We should probably not handle it without tools." And I learned on that one, to be kind of more deliberate with my instruction and maybe not be as sarcastic or joking around some of these kids, because some of these kids don't have any experience in a shop environment. And, for lack of a better word, many of them have been, live in apartments their whole lives, right? I use the word apartment dwellers. My wife says it doesn't sound nice, but, when you have someone who's lived in an apartment their whole life, they don't have access to shop areas, toolboxes. They may not be having the needs to, fix a loose door handle or replace a light bulb. So, in a public high school, we have a lot of those students sitting in our space. So we need to be real deliberate with safety and circumstances. Like when you're using a torch, they need to know that's going to be hot for a long time, even after it's done glowing red. So that would be probably my second one that stands out. And I know these are real simple seeming ones, but I think that simplicity kind of is where you got to focus to really hone in and have a strong foundation about safety.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg.
I was going to chime in. I mean, I'm driving, so I just have the mic going now. But I did, when I was teaching at Madison, also where Omar teaches now, this is probably about 5 years before Omar started teaching there. We had a student that had, brought in his pickup truck for new, replace his brake pads and rotors. And, he was on the lift and doing that and let the car down. And after he put the wheels and tires on and torqued it and topped it off with brake fluid. But as we all know, as all of us know as shop teachers, when you got 36 kids, you can't be in 36 places at once, right? So you're always running around. You're, trying to deal with this kid that wants to go to the bathroom, and this kid, can't find the tool, and this kid's trying to sneak out. So you're trying to manage 50 things at once. Well, this kid finished putting his wheels on and torqued them and got in his car after he put the brake pads on and started it up and put it in reverse. Well, I don't know if you guys know, but there's a very important step that you're supposed to do before you start the car up after you replace the brake pads. Does anybody want to chime in and know what that is? Does anybody happen to know what you do after you put brake pads in your car before you drive it?
The brakes.
You gotta bleed the brakes. Yeah, exactly. You gotta bleed the brakes or pump them up, right? So this kid gets in his Ford Ranger and puts it in reverse and hits the gas, and sure enough, there's nothing going to stop this dude. and he went right through the chain link fence. So there was a chain link fence, Omar, if you can envision the old shop.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting, though. It was a chain link fence, so that the car, you would think the chain link fence would stop the car, but it broke all the little bands that hold, the little wire that holds all the chain link on. And what it did is it literally like flexed so much a chain link fence. It didn't actually break the fence. The car went under the fence. And so this fencing literally scraped down the entire roof of the truck, down the windshield, down the hood. And the guy went up and hit the back of the portable bungalow. So it was a cluster F, if you can imagine. It was a cluster.
Lucky that thing didn't go into the cab, like impale him with the.
Yeah, well, yeah. What I called it was a fluster cluck. But anyway, it was, luckily he didn't hit any other students, and he went right in between the two rails of the fence post. But yeah, I mean, it did thousands of dollars of damage on his nice Ford Ranger truck. And then, I'm having to answer to administrators and parents but that was like a learning experience. Like, so that set up a new protocol, like, okay, anyone who does brakes on their car, you're not allowed to do anything until I actually physically feel the brake pedal and make sure it's got brakes, So that was, it could have been a lot worse, right? It could have been a couple students behind them, and there probably were. They all jumped out of the way. I just remember hearing the noise and looking and seeing what the hell is this guy doing, and but it was out of control. So that was my shop story when I taught auto shop, and I remember that one. So
that's a good one. Bleed the brakes. They don't know, the kids don't know. What I always, so I've got a million stories, but I want to hear all your stuff, but a quick one about, brakes and replacing stuff. Actually, this was actually from my old supervisor, Mr. Endress. And the kid had torqued down the bearings as if it was something that you crank down on and leave it as tight as possible. So he's loading up the bearing at the point where it's super tight. So now when you go down the highway, sure, it turns, but then it heated up so much that it actually liquefied the spindle and the whole wheel fell off. So, they don't know you're supposed to load it up, turn it back, and then pin the castle nut. And everybody knows how these things work. So, something I typically do is you got to check it. Like, you can't turn the machine on. You could set up, but you can't do anything until I see it, type of thing. That's kind of what you said there. That'll keep it safer. Obviously, something will pass through, pretty wild. Let's move around the room. We got to say hi to Duke Lazowski's in the house. How you doing, Duke?
Good. What's going on?
Man, you missed it. Jimmy was here, and we were also getting a private tour of Pete Ardimo's shop. Remember the shop that does land speed records, like in the desert?
Yeah. Yep.
Greg was out there. He gave us a little tour, and they're getting ready to race, I think, this weekend. So Greg's in the house from California. Omar's here from California.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of people. We got some new people. We got Logan from Rochester, New York. We got Noah's in the house from Virginia. Kevin Witt. Kevin used to work with me. He's the woodshop teacher. And Adam, where are you coming in from? I forgot. I'm sorry. Oh, Hudson Valley.
Yeah, Waukegan.
Oh, yeah. You're in Speakeasy neighborhood, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. And Nick's here, obviously, and Tim. So it's been cool, man. It's been cool, Duke. Duke, you got middle school kids, man. Do you have eyes on the back of your head? How do you?
You have to. All right. So first, like my first time around, I didn't become a shop teacher because my old shop teacher was trying to talk me into it. Dude, you should become a shop teacher. Come back to East Stroudsburg, maybe take my job. Right? But there's this kid in class. He used to have kickbacks like weekly.
Oh, yeah.
Right in his nuts. So I'm thinking to myself, look, why do I want to put myself in that position? Right? So I said, you know what? I'm not going to be. I'll go the elementary route. So I went to the elementary route. I'm looking for a job. And my old shop teacher calls me up and says, still need a job? I said, yeah. He says, well, there's a shop teacher job open. I said, well, I didn't want to do that in the first place. He says, it's middle school. It's just like almost elementary. I said, oh, same thing. So sign me up. So that's when I took all my classes at the college in New Jersey. But so that's a shop safety story. Just with the middle school kids, you got to be on them all the time.
Yeah.
But like hand tools, one thing that's helped me, we use a back saw and the coping saw to cut out our Pinewood Derby cars. I show them the important thing. They're all nervous. Are we going to cut our fingers off? I'm like, guys, you're not going to cut your fingers off. So relax on that. Unless you have no tolerance of pain. But one thing I do is I have them keep both hands on the saw. So the back saw, of course, one on the handle and one hand on the frame on the top part of it. Tell them it's one to keep it steady, but realistically, it's more for me just to keep both hands on the tool. Same thing with the coping saw. Coping saw is probably more dangerous than the back saw, but the blade is wider on the back saw. The kids think the back saw is more dangerous, but the coping saw, the blade's thinner. Same thing. One hand on the handle, one hand on the frame. I tell them, I've been here for over 25 years. Make up one car a marking period. That's over 100 cars. How many times do you think I took my hand off the saw? 0. So just stress it, being around, same thing. But, the class sizes are getting bigger, so it's harder.
Duke, make a good point. Like where the hands are. I have a sheet metal cutter, and I do not let them hold the material while cutting. If you got one hand holding material, one hand moving the blade down, there's a possibility to get that hand in there, Let's go over to K-Witt. Kevin Witt, he's in New Jersey area and kind of by Rutgers, I guess. And but you had something happen recently. You mind sharing a story with us?
Well, it's a good segue with the hands and where the hands got to be, right? So, I started out with Ron in West New York, alternate route. Ron's like, hey, we need a shop teacher. We need a wood shop teacher. You'd be great. And 3 months later, I'm walking into the building. They give me the keys, and they're like, yeah, make sure nobody gets hurt. Basically, that's all I got. But so I was there for 5 years. Then I switched districts, so the commute was just kind of crazy. But I'm in northern Burlington now. It's kind of close near to Fort Dix in New Jersey down here. But last year I had my first, I'll say, bad injury from a student for the first time in my teaching career. So and I actually talking about hands, and I kind of got a visual aid for everybody. The shop teachers will know what's going on, but basically we're doing our toy car and trucks, and it was kind of cool. It's like around the holidays, and everybody's into it. Everybody loves that, and I let the kids get creative, and kids are putting smokestacks on their trucks and doing all kinds of extra stuff. And one kid was using a dowel jig, took a small piece of wood, put it in a dowel jig, took the drill, put it in while he was holding it.
Oh,
went right through the piece of wood and shredded 2 of his fingers that went through over here.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's just like one of those things where, nobody was using big machines. It was just, a hand tool. You're really kind of not. I was working on the CNC on the opposite side of the room with some other students, and he just comes over. He's like, Mr. Witt, and he's holding his hands, and I just looked, and he was a mangled mess, just dripping blood all over the place. So we got him back to the sink, wrapped up his hand, called the nurse and everything like that. But that was my first real nasty one, aside from some bad splinters or whatever. We had a couple of saw stop trips at West New York. One of them needed a Band-Aid. That was it. Other ones, we're never quite sure what it was about, but the one I was like standing right there with the kid, and he took his cut off and like reached, it was stuck under the blade guard, and he shut the saw off, and while it's spinning down, went and reached as the saw was spinning down, and just caught the tip of his pinky,
Oh,
but
that happened in West New York?
That happened in West New York, but it was the saw stop, so nothing happened. He just put a Band-Aid on it, it was done, but it was just no matter how many times you're going to tell them, it's just like, wait for the saw to stop, wait for to use something to push it out of the way. It's just, they're just,
wow,
they just default to something. You're just like, oh, I'm just going to go grab this thing, and just.
I will tell you, I do think that the kids, I know this sounds silly, but I do think the kids are a little bit mesmerized by the blade. They do reach for spinning things, which is like, I know it sounds silly, but they do. Actually, Canito, the guy who worked obviously before Kevin there, he was there for 41 years. And he told me, I think I wasn't there for it, but there was an incident that happened, and then everybody ran in to find out. This kid like just mesmerized, went for the blade, and he like old school shop teacher, just boom, just hit the kid out of the way at the last moment. And the kid was like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And it's like, dude, you were gonna grab that blade. It's like, oh my God. So you never know what you're getting in the shop. They're not vetted. They're just signed up for the class, you know. But I wanted to ask you with the incident that happened. So I know it's like obvious, like don't screw your finger, right? Okay, but like, what do you think happened there? He just didn't calculate that this thing was longer than the block. Is that kind of like it was just obvious?
It was most likely that, yeah, he just didn't realize either the piece of wood was too short. He told me that the piece of wood broke while it was in the jig. I don't know if that happened or not. It kind of doesn't matter at that point. But just talking about, when I showed everybody how to use this jig, it was always like, once it's in, now it goes in the bench vise. It was one of those points where you did it and you showed them how to do it in class, but thinking back, you're like, maybe I didn't stress that hard enough that you like never hold this thing, So now it's, of course, obviously, I'm like, these things, you never hold these things. There's always two hands on your drill. If you can't put two hands on your drill, something's wrong.
Right.
While you're doing something.
Instead of
one hand on the trigger, one hand on the top, while you're, so
now they can't be.
So now they got to figure out, how do I clamp it?
Huge. Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's the rule, two hands on the drill, so now you got to figure out how do you clamp it, so it's either the bench vise or grab a couple quick clamps or whatever, clamp it to the table. And they got to think of something different. So it's like, you're never, when you got a drill, you got two hands on it. Figure out what else you're doing,
Yeah, wow. Go ahead. You got.
I tell my kids the same thing. Like, look, I've been doing this a long time. You're not gonna invent a new way to use a tool or machine. If you're not doing it this way, you're probably doing something wrong. So just stop. Ask for help. Because they think, well, I'm gonna do it this way. Well, who told you to do it that way? No.
Yeah.
Stop.
Hey, Bron, can I chime in for a second?
Hey, I just want to say it's been awesome, guys. I got to get to class. Been a pleasure, and I hope to be on again soon. I appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Omar, anytime. I really appreciate it. I think it's important to have you with the West Coast automotive perspective. I think that's important. You bring a lot to the table, so anytime, you're welcome.
Thank you. And then, maybe next time I'll do a tour of my high school facility. I think you guys might.
That'd be great. Yeah, we could feature the whole thing. That'd be awesome. Yeah,
that'd be great. Okay, thanks, guys.
It's legit, guys. You got to want to see the shop.
Have a good one. Bye.
Okay, that's it. Greg, go ahead. You got something?
Yeah, so I know Omar just jumped out because I know Omar had this problem, but I was curious, how many of the shop teachers use SP2 for the safety testing component? Do you guys use SP2? Are you guys familiar with that?
I don't even know what it is. Does anybody here know what that is? We don't know what that is.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, SP2 it stands for Safety, Pollution, and Prevention, and it's like a certificate. Like you can get a certificate, safety training program. A lot of employers use it, and we've used it a lot in our high schools. SP2. Safety, but they recently just transitioned to a new platform, and that's why I was curious if any of you guys are using the new platform, because we're really freaking struggling. Like it used to be, like when the shit just. Oh, sorry, I swear, I'm sorry.
No,
when stuff just. When stuff just works. It's like this freaking this shit works. Am I up? And then they got to redesign it and try and make it all different. And then you're like, where'd this button go? And how do I grade the test? And how do I look up a kid? So they redesigned it, and now it's really hard to use. But we use it in California. We use it in San Diego because it's an online safety program, and they have it for construction, they have it for automotive, they have it for many different industry sectors, for culinary. So you could use it for your building trades and construction class. But it really logs. It really has a way of tracking the student, how much time they spent in each module, and then they have to take a test. And if they pass the test with the score that's required, then it also gives them an industry recognized certificate. so that this says that and then they also have like an OSHA 10 component and so on. But I was just curious because it worked flawlessly for like the last 15 years. And now they sold the company to someone else, and now it's on this LMS, and it's really difficult to navigate now. That's why I was curious if other instructors use it. But I'm surprised that you guys don't. I thought a lot of people use it here, but just curious.
So we use like a similar program to do like OSHA training. I think it's probably because a lot of when you get to like that size for like OSHA stuff, it's regional. Like,
okay.
We use Mid-Atlantic because I'm in
I think
Virginia.
everybody on the call now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Noah.
No, I was just responding to you.
I think everybody on the call now is kind of East Coast. So maybe this is maybe it's just has to do with the sales team never made it over here. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the company is actually out of Indiana though. SP2, that's where they originated from. And I knew the original guy who created the company, and it's really grown. And I know that in other districts and stuff they use it. But yeah, maybe it's not. But I mean, that's something you guys can look at. But if it's on an LMS, a learning management system, so now it's a little bit more work to navigate. But it is pretty cool too because they have other modules in there. So you basically can do the basic general construction training, and then within inside of that they have other modules, different work ethics, resume building skills, like in the automotive side they have the basic automotive, and then they have like lifting a car module, they have with lifts, and then they have torque wrenches. So there's all different kinds of components, but something you guys might want to look at it. But I don't know, I know you guys probably do a paper and pencil Scantron type probably safety test, right? But that's what we used to do.
This is a good segue into, do you as a shop teacher, who here runs a safety test? And I could just tell you right now, you're not on the spot because I actually don't run the test. I just find that, the kids, I don't know if it's nowadays or forever, they're just sort of trying to get by. So they're not going to memorize anything anyway. And it doesn't guarantee their safety. So I do safety a little bit differently. I just show them what can go wrong on purpose. So I'll like break something or show a demonstration, and then I also have a situation where they're allowed to touch anything they want. They just can't turn on the power switch of any power tool until I see it. So that's my way of keeping everybody safe. So admittedly, I don't run like a safety paper, but I would like to know what everybody else does.
Ron, we all know you're nuts, first of all, so let's just get over that. But you got to think about little CYA. It's like cover your ass, and
that's true.
Really, you got to what I learned from Chris Anderson at my Rutgers Makerspace certificate. It's layers of liability or layers of safety. I give the safety test, and you let them take it as many times as they want. And I know they're not memorizing it. Yeah, I understand that. I'm giving them all the in-class demos. I'm giving them videos. I'm doing everything I possibly can. I need to document that. Okay. If they do something stupid, which most of them won't, but you're going to get that 1% or whatever is going to do it. And then if something bad does happen and then stuff starts coming back to you, and it's like, well, what did you do? And it's like, well, he got the 100 on the safety test. He watched the Ed Puzzle video. I showed he watched the safety video. He did all these things. I did my in-class demo. My reasonable liability or my due diligence is done. But when you don't have all of that stuff recorded, and it's just like, then it's like your word against his, or that family and all that stuff, and you're opening yourself up. I just personally, I would say you're opening yourself up to a world of hurt. Yeah.
No, Kevin, I think you're right. I would like to use maybe this system or write up my safety. I just haven't, and it's not that I'm against using it. I think it would reinforce it. So maybe I'll do like a hybrid. I'll do it my way. Kind of, but also, hey, can you guys fill out this form? And then it's true. Like, it'll reinforce it, and it'll write down that they did acknowledge it at least. I mean, that's pretty normal for anything you do.
if
Ron-
you do it on a Google form and then they take the test, you have all their emails, you see when they took it, you see all that, you have all that stuff's recorded in your, your district, stuff like that. You have, it's definitely a peace of mind. I know for me at least, just knowing that you don't know, like Jim, like the rest of said, you don't know what's coming down the line.
That's
true. It's just like anything can happen. And it's just like one of those things where it's just like, well, you never covered this. You never told us A, B, and C. And you're like, in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, most likely I did, but it's possibility it might have like got glossed over. But if it's on that test and you're like, dude, it was on this test. Why did you do that? Why, I told you not to do it. You answered the question knowing it the right way. And then you went and did it anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
it's like,
I'll put like study guides and all the safety presentations that I go through on Classroom too. Like, so there is like Kevin said, just there's layers there. I did the lesson, I did the demo, I provided you with my PowerPoint, I provided you with my study guide. You took the test 4 times, and then that kid get hurt. A prime example with the kid that tripped the saw stop last week or 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, we want to hear that story.
Just making sure that you got, the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and just making sure that all that stuff is documented helps. And I always, whether a kid gets hurt, kid gets stung by a bee in the class, or gets a pretty serious scrape or bump, I automatically email home, and the parents are always very appreciative, and just they want to hear your side of the story. They want to hear the kid's side of the story. They want the pieces put together. So that's the best way to make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Adam, go ahead, and then Greg, I think, had something to add. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I teach 8th grade, and I definitely do tests, and I keep those tests because normally they take tests, I give it back to them. The other good thing about the test is if you cover it in class and a kid's absent that day, then you might not notice that or something, and you think you covered it, or maybe that kid just zoned out because that's what they do. But if you have that test, and that's like a big thing, just something, fall back and be able to kind of show like you were doing the right things,
now that I'm just thinking out loud, I think that the test is needed. The point I was trying to say about what I do is that I want to rely on the test. And I wasn't saying that you guys are doing that. I just find that the test alone probably wouldn't, that would scare me. That, they're good, now they're good. No, they're not good just because they wrote something down on a piece of paper. But I would like to do my demonstrations and then do the test. And I'm sure that's kind of like, maybe that's obvious how you guys do it anyway. So I think that you're probably right. Maybe I'm skipping a step that I shouldn't be skipping. And actually, I spoke with my insurance company about my private business as well, because I teach intro to welding, and they advise that that I have a test in there as well. So I've been doing it kind of a little bit in the wind there, and it's probably not a good idea. I agree with what you guys are saying. Greg, you had something.
Don't stop giving your in-class demos. Don't change that. Don't change the way you do that. Just add that layer, add that extra thing in. And then like I go another step where like I have like an Excel spreadsheet with all the students for each period. And then, I have there's as the year goes on, there's 10 safety tests, and as they all clip they're all achieving those, you can see who's a right to use certain machines. Like some kids in your class are okay to use a welder and some aren't. So you have that visible.
So you have levels of access.
Each tool, each tool is a new safety test. Miter saw safety test, drill press safety test. And those are available online from ITEA, or I can forward you. They're wood shop ones, but like drill press, all the just easy Google forms that stuff gets dumped onto a spreadsheet. It's real easy to see everybody and classify it by period, and it makes your life a lot easier. Administrative wise, keeping everything in order.
Yeah. Ron, it doesn't take a lot of class time to give a safety test.
That's true.
You know, even look at the ones ITEA. True or false? Safety glasses should be worn when using tools or machines. Like, you know, like for peace of mind. You know what? And if you guys use Edpuzzle, there's a lot of Edpuzzle videos on there with questions as well. So a lot of times, if I'm teaching the miter saw in the beginning of the marking period, we're not going to use it again until the end of the marking period. Here, take this, you know, Edpuzzle. You're not taking the same safety test. You already took it. You do the Edpuzzle. You know, you're covering yourself, and they're getting as well.
Is that ITTA? Is that only construction or wood related, or is that?
No, that's our International Tech Ed Association.
And how do you get access to that Google form that you were just showing
I just
right
went right on there.
Go right
It's
on,
free.
yeah.
Okay, because I'd like to
gonna
share
put-
that with other teachers as well.
Perfect. I'm gonna put that right in the chat right here.
Because
There
we're
is a-
getting
there
a
is
lot
a
of these
membership.
maker spaces. Oh, okay. Sorry. What
There
was
is
that?
a membership.
Go ahead, Duke. What were you saying?
There is a membership for ITEA, but all the resources are there. That just gives you access to the magazine. Now, I will tell you, like for ITEA, you go to like the drill press, right? Right in the middle, Ron, and then you watch these videos for the international.
Today we're going to go over the
Tech
parts
Ed-
of the drill press.
Oh
They're
yeah.
not the greatest video.
You know, just in the interest of time, this is a good segue. I actually got something queued up here. I do something kind of interesting about safety. I have the kids create lessons on how to teach each tool. It takes it takes more time than the normal thing. I'll just give you a sample. So instead of watching the video, I have them make a video. I can just pull it up real quick. And then let me see if I can pull this up. It'll take a sec. Because you're right, like if they're watching a video, like they may or may not help, you know. So let's see here. Yeah, here we go. So this is actually a kid's video. And he's they're explaining the do's and don'ts. There's a kid talking right now on the video.
Reading my slides. So our first scenario is this slide in my instructions that reminds the tester to look over all the slides and to make sure to understand everything, all the photos, all the slides. Now the do for this is,
and like just to save you guys some time, I'll skip ahead.
in general, and just refer to the photos.
Let's see, let me skip ahead here.
Use for this would be following the instructions.
Actually, what they do is they actually make a step-by-step procedure. Because when I don't know, I mean, I'm like a 15-year-old or like a 16-year-old, and me being 46, I'm 30 years apart from them now. And it's English to English translation. Like, I don't think we're speaking the same language any longer. So I need them to explain it to other kids. And so I call it English to English. And here's another example. I actually have another kid come in the room and test it out. So this will be the kid who designed it. Then what they'll do is this is them watching another kid. The video sped up, but them watching another kid follow the instructions on how to use the drill press. Well, one, it saves me time because I don't have to teach the drill press any longer. And then two, they really know how to use the drill press because they're teaching it. So I don't know. This is just something that I do. It's kind of out of the norm. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Yeah. So when these are kind of ready to go, I'll make them available if anybody wants them. They have to make their own PowerPoint as well on how to use it. Is this something? And so you guys would be interested in this? Would this work in your classroom?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Like coming back from Christmas vacation, everybody forgets everything, and then come back in and say, all right, let's make some videos, and like split them up into groups, give everybody a different machine, share and check out the videos and just do like almost like a really good review. I think that might be a really good kind of thing too. You see, and then you start keeping the best ones and kind of like keeping those in a nice little archive somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I had some funny stuff happen. You see this plug that's hooked up to the chuck, the key chuck, and then what happened is that's actually what connects one of the legs in the machine. So it won't run unless that's in there. But the kids take that and they plug it into the wall. It's a short circuit designed that way. And so it just pops well, I have a fuse. So it pops the fuse and then they hide it. They always hide it. And then like, oh, why won't the drill press turn on? And I was like, well, the power's on. What's going on? And they're like, oh, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to say you probably popped the fuse. So we check it, so, stuff like this happens. Yeah, I figured that was a good one to throw in there, having the kids, that's just my advice, making the kids be responsible as part of what's going on. I want to tell a horror story, a close call that I had, that maybe Greg does automotive, so maybe he could chime in on some of the ways to keep people safe. I want to talk about springs.
I'm coil springs, right?
Yeah, coil springs.
Well, you shouldn't touch it unless you have the Lyle coil spring compressor, the one that mounts on the wall, or don't be using those freaking cheap Harbor Freight, import tuner coil spring compressors, or you will, that's stay away from that crap.
Okay, so I don't, I'm sure people work on cars and whatnot, but if you don't know, those springs have enough energy to kill you for sure. So what you have to do is you actually have to compress them. And Greg knows more than I do about this.
Yeah. I mean, that would be like falling off the ladder 10 times to equal one spring.
So let me tell you my horror story. It's very naive. I got very lucky, and the kid got even more lucky than me. Is that we were working on a car, and this is like year one, literally the first year I was teaching, and and I had auto shop experience. And let me back up a little. I was in an auto shop that was working on Rolls Royces, just happens to be, and but I was just like a young apprentice, and the mechanic asked me to undo, I guess would be the kingpin, or the basically one pin that held everything together, and I'm going on it, right, and I've got my hand on the bottom of like this enormous drum brake on the front, because it's like a Rolls Royce from the, I don't know, 50s or 60s, and it's this enormous brake, and I got my hand on the bottom, and I'm pulling, and I'm wrenching on it, and I stop because it's almost at the end. I take my hand, I'm like, I can't do this. So, I put two hands here and I finish it. Well, it lets go, and that drum brake slams into the ground with the entire force of the spring, because the car was lifted up. So it goes pow, like that, like boom, into the concrete, puts a mark in the concrete. My hand just 1 second prior was underneath that bottom thing. So if you're going to work on the suspension, you must compress the spring and take the energy out of it. You could even tie them up and tether them, because they might jump around the room. And then, so we were working on a car. Now I'm a teacher and working on a car. I got a kid underneath the car. It's a similar thing. We're taking apart a suspension, and I did not compress the spring. So now what almost took off my hand, I almost took off, like hurt a kid. And man, I'm not learning this lesson a third time. So we let it go, and the suspension opened up with the spring's energy, and the kid was like real close by, like his hand and shoulder were like right there. So, that lesson learned from my horror story is if you're doing automotive work, those springs have enough energy to do some serious damage, because when they let go, obviously it was like pretty obvious. I'll explain it. So that's my horror story. Greg, how do you guys compress the springs over there? Oh, I don't know if he's still there.
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm actually trying to find a little coil spring mishap thing on YouTube that was circulated. Well, I bought the wall mounted coil spring compressors. So they go and so and then there's the other one is like a clamshell spring
What do you do if
compressor.
it's on the car? Don't you just put the
Well, that's like the clamshell style coil spring compressor, but when it comes, I know all you guys are, it sounds like we got a lot of shop teachers in here, and there are certain things that we do in the industry that are dangerous, coil springs being one. So when this does happen to be, if the student's working on suspension, it's really done with the instructor. It's the same kind of thing. If you guys are ripping real thin wood on, real thin strips on a freaking table saw, you're not going to put your beginning student on it doing it. It's probably going to end up being one of you doing a demo. But yeah, those are some of the coil springs. But there's different varieties there in those pictures you're showing. So some of those ones in the little plastic box, those are the ones that you can buy at Harbor Freight, and those are the ones where people get hurt really bad. I'm going to look while I have the mic open. I'm going to keep seeing if I can find that little coil spring mishap.
What was the name of the one that you have?
Ours I think is made by Lyle or something like that. It's like the wall mounted one. Yeah, there's a couple of them. If you look it up on YouTube, I mean, there's a couple of coil spring accidents, but there was one recently I just saw where a guy was using one of those cheap coil spring compressors from Harbor Freight, and it slipped off, and he got his hand stuck in between the spring, and it did not look good at all. It was terrible.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, I think this is it right here. Yeah, kid almost lose. Yeah, it's this one. I got to figure out how to send it to you though.
Oh, just copy it into the chat there. Or
anyway,
I can type it in if you have the.
I got to figure out if there's a way I can share this with you, Ron. But there's a few out there on YouTube.
Okay.
So I had a question I was thinking about today. Now we have all shop teachers here. Anybody have, as a shop teacher in the classroom, had an accident to themselves as a teacher where students witnessed it or anything like that? Or what's your worst one? Tim woke up.
Got his hand up. What happened, Tim?
I'm just listening. I'm listening. I had two of them. One of them, I sliced my hand open with an X-Acto knife in a graphics lab when I was teaching. So that was number one. I sliced my thumb open. I didn't need any stitches. I just needed to use some of that skin glue to close that up. But that happened in the middle of the class. And then I had the top part of my finger go right through the router in the middle of the class. Once again, they just used some skin glue and closed that up. So, yeah, I had two incidents at my old school where I was at. The router incident, I was doing something really stupid, and it was just something too small, and I wasn't paying attention. Class full of kids, and of course, the nurse is the farthest room from the shop, so there was trail of blood all the way down to the nurse's room. But yeah, so that's I've been in that role.
Yeah, that's crazy. Here's
it's weird. It's weird. Like, what do you say? It's like, I gotta go. The one day, the second time it happened with my finger and with the router, I killed the power and I left the kids there by themselves. And when I went past the faculty room, I yelled at them like, I got hurt. I'm running to the nurse. Somebody's got to cover my class. And somebody went down to my room.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny one. So the sheet metal cutter, if you don't have the elephant's foot on there, like the way to hold it down, it tips up the sheet and slices off what looks like a sliver, like a needle, right? And if you're using the wrong thickness, so kids, they always just force it. If it doesn't cut, just use the power. So bam. So it's slicing, and it keeps on making these little hairs. So he goes to grab the hair to pull it off because it looks like splinters on the side of and you go to pull it off. Those are razor blades. Those are flexible needles with razor's edge on them. So he slices his finger on it and he's like, oh my God, he's got blood everywhere. I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I pulled on this. I'm like, let me see that. And I pull it and slice my finger right after he slices his finger. And I'm just like, how did this happen? And the same thing happened with welding wire, MIG wire. Okay. There was, MIG wire was in the, what you call it? Like a little bucket. I guess the kids were putting the extra little tips in there or something. I don't know why they did that. And kid went and he moved it and it went through his finger out the other side. So it's sticking in and he pulled it out. And I go, oh my God, what happened? And he's like, oh, I just did this. Like, where? And I did the same thing. And it went in the finger and out the other side. Same exact thing. And I pulled it out and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I did that twice. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy, you know? Tim, you know, we didn't even get to the saw stop. I mean, there's so many good stories in here. But in the interest of time, we're going to go to the saw stop incident. But before we get to that, you work with a lathe all the time. I don't know if people know, but you got to follow Tim on Instagram. He does absolutely beautiful artistic quality work with his students on the lathe with these compound insets. Very cool. But aside from that, how do you keep everybody safe on a lathe? Like, that's a pretty serious machine.
It's the one machine I actually do not like teaching. That and the router. I do not like teaching the lathe. I do not like teaching the router. It's just one of those where I'm not comfortable doing it, number one. And number two, to teach those machines, your back literally has to be to the kids. The problem with the lathe is a lot of it is feel, and you can't teach the feel. So you can tell the kids it should feel like this, it should feel like that. You know, as you're looking, you should be moving your hands this way and that way. But the problem is most of the time they're not listening to what you're saying, and then they don't understand. So then when they go in, the tool rests too far away, or the tool rests too high, the tool rests too low. And those first periods, if you will, that they're on the lathe, you got to literally stand right next to them and just correct everything wrong they're doing. Like, no, spread your feet out. No, you don't have your shoulders that height. You know, bring your hands down, bring your hands up. You're trying to correct all those little things to get them in the spot where they're successful. So that's what I run into with the lathe, and our lathe has cages on them. So when they're roughing and doing that kind of stuff, have the cages down, make sure the tools are sharp as best you can. If they're turning a faceplate piece, make sure the tailstock's out and secure it against the faceplate piece or whatever piece they're working on until the time where you can't use that at all. It's actually in the way. So I've just figured out little things that work to help keep the kids safe. You know, of course, the hair tied back, sleeves up.
Oh, yeah.
Jewelry, all that stuff too. It all matters. It all matters. And once you get the kids going, they actually start monitoring themselves. Like, because one kid will help another kid, and then they'll start correcting each other. And once you get to that point, you're like, okay, I can back off a little bit because there's a competent person there that's helping the other ones, or then I can just do a couple check-ins every once in a while and go from there. But teaching the lathe is literally feel. It's literally just explaining to the kids, you need to look at this, you need to watch that, and then go from there, and then give them the test, do the demonstration.
And it's a lot of endurance too, and hand strength, which is really a kind of a variable you can't sometimes really X out. You can't really like work that variable out because you're working on, you said the shoulders tensing up, or how much endurance do they have? What are they doing? They get a little lazy and they get a little loose on that tool, and then the end of that tool is going to catch. That's the scary part of it too. Like with me when I'm thinking about teaching it and stuff.
So the other thing, not to scare the kids, but you have to scare the kids.
Just for a second, interrupt for a second. This is something I always point to. Is this Yale student? She was like, super smart or whatever, and she got her hair caught in the lathe. Now, here's the crazy part: she was alone, and it killed her. And then they found her, and I let that sink in for the kids that this is not. I don't know how this goes up. These ads.
We want to see
crazy.
the video.
Yeah,
no, I'm joking.
Oh yeah, right. I'm sure that they might have the video. But the thing is that these kids don't realize that how fast. I always say things will happen and do stuff to you before you get to say ow. So it's before that moment where you're like, oh, ow, this hurts. Yeah, it already got you. So that's the thing that I kind of instill upon them. What were you saying, Tim? I'm sorry.
I was just saying, like, not this. I try not to do it anymore, but you have to. Like, you tell the kids, like, this machine will hurt you, and if you tell them that, and as soon as you say that, then they get all scared and then they don't want to do anything. But like, I tell them with the kids, like, if you let go of the tool, it gets jammed between the tool, the workpiece and the tool rest. This thing could break your jaw, like, because it's in a position where it's near your face, and they can't comprehend that. And then, of course, now they get all scared because they're afraid they're going to break their jaw. They're afraid they're going to get hurt or something. And that's not the reason why I tell them that. But it seems like it just goes total other level. So you have to be careful how you break that news to them about that. Like last year when I was teaching Woods 1 for the first time, I told the kids, like, we were doing the bandsaw, like, this will cut your fingers off. And they're like, now nobody wanted to touch the bandsaw. And like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But it's the truth. Like, it literally would cut your finger right off. And so you got to kind of approach these topics certain ways. And in one way, like, years ago, that worked. Like, it just worked. Like, you fear them and they'd be safe. But now it's like everybody's a scaredy cat. And they're afraid they're going to get hurt, so they don't want to do it.
You know what I do is I always relate it to sports, and I say, we got to go over the safety stuff. Our goal is to minimize the risk. Anytime you do anything, there's a risk associated. Almost everyone's involved in sports. I say, what do you do to prevent injury in the sport you play? You got to train. You got to know what you're doing. You got to warm up. It's the same thing. You got to be in the right mindset when you go in the lab to work. If you're having a bad day, you need to focus before you go in there. And I tell them that there is a risk, and our goal is to minimize that risk. You're never going to eliminate it, but our goal is to reduce it. And then the bandsaw stuff, I always tell them, hey, the next time you go to the grocery store, go to the butcher, look in the back, you'll see the bandsaws. If they're ripping through half a cow, what do you think it's going to do to your little finger if you're not paying attention, But that seems to put it in terms that they get, especially with the sports connection.
That's a good idea, Adam. Let me go to Duke and Nick for the lathe. What do you guys think of Duke? What do you do to keep middle school kids safe on a lathe?
Just use the small pen ones.
Oh yeah, but still, you can catch your hair, jewelry. Things get pulled in. You can pull your whole face in.
Hoodie strings you got to watch for.
Yeah.
Even sometimes if you're using like small pieces of paper towel that can get wrapped in there. Same thing. You just got to be keep an eye on them. For years, I didn't use the lathe with middle school kids because I thought it was so dangerous. But then after going to maker camp, watching Nick, observe 6 or 7 of them going at once, I was ready to take the step.
try it out.
Yeah, Nick,
So-
you're the guy. Nick, how do you
the
keep people safe on so many lathes?
I just let them go. No. Survival of the fittest.
Oh, that's funny.
And in the class, in my school shop, I have two large 36-inch Powermatics, and we were using those for years. And I didn't have any instances that kids were getting hurt. The other colleague had a kid wasn't holding the tool right, and it caught and went in between the tool rest and the
Oh yeah.
piece, and it spun up and clocked his forearm, so it fractured that, but didn't, it was a hairline fracture, but then it also broke the tool rest. But like when kids were on those, it was all right. I've demonstrated 5 times. I've shown you what can happen, and I would create a catch and have them, as slow as I could turn the lathe down and have a controlled catch, so they would get that quick smack in the face visual. And then when I switched to these mini lathes, it's still all the same safety stuff that Tim mentioned. It's on a smaller scale, and the nice thing about the mini lathes is for the speed that they're mostly turning at, they're going to be able to stop it. Like they're going to bog the machine down. It's not going to pull them in and keep pulling their arm off, or if their sleeve gets caught, that type of stuff. But
yeah. Well, the thing is, when it comes to this stuff, there's, like even the demonstration to be safe sometimes is unsafe. So one time I took a glove and I got near the milling machine and I said, look what happens. And the milling machine pulled it in so quickly, it almost pulled my hand in. So, and I saw a demonstration of a table saw, because actually we had a situation actually between Canito and Kevin Witt. And Kevin, thank you for those 5 years, because let me tell you, you're awesome, man. We had this guy right before Kevin that was injuring people. I'm going to leave it nameless, but people were getting hurt like twice a year. Okay. And so, to be honest, I'm not a wood shop teacher. I don't really know that much about the table saw, but I had to learn. And some of the things I learned was that the riving knife, not to get real technical, because we only got like maybe 10, 15 minutes left of this podcast, but it's getting late. But the riving knife keeps things separate as they exit. If they don't have the knife, it can turn and kick back to you. And I watched a guy do this with foam. It was so dramatic of a pull, it pulled him in and he almost cut his hand off while doing a demonstration. So could you guys who use table saw chime in on that? What's the deal with the riving knife? So why do people take it off? Why do people leave it on? How effective is it?
And then he walks away.
No, I'm here.
When I took over my shop, all the table saws had the riving knife taken off. And I remember the only time I've ever had a kickback on a saw is when I had a shop, cabinet shop type setup, and I was running it, man, and that thing flew between my arm and me, and there was concrete wall. It busted that thing up, and I was alone in my shop. And I remember I cut everything off. This was I was like 21 at the time. I go and just sit down in a chair, and I just sat there for like an hour just because it scared the shit out of me.
It happened to me during college in a woodworking class. I had kickback, and it got me in the, groin area, and I just slightly kicked the saw off and grabbed my piece because I didn't want to tell the professor. I just went and sat in the corner for a while. But I remember in college and, even in high school, late 90s, that we didn't have riving knives on the table saw. So
Oh, really?
It wasn't mandated as far as manufacturing wise to have it put on the saws. And retrofitted them throughout the last 20 years, I want to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of them had some real crappy ones too that like bent, so they would get in the way and it would cause friction, and then people would just take them off because they were just kind of more cumbersome. But it was never explained to me when I was first started using the table, so I was never pointed out or anything like that. So it's one of those things like, I think it's more aware now, but they make definitely make a big deal about always having them on there now in some way, shape, or form.
So the one guy I share my room with, he's a real supporter of using the saw stop guard, and I don't like the saw stop guard just because you can't see the blade, and I feel like and then they got the kickback paws, and the technology is great. I mean, there's some really great technology with that, but you got to be able to see that blade when you're feeding that piece of wood through there. And I tell the kids, if that shark fin, that riving knife is not in that saw, you should not use it, period. And then they're like, well, what about a dado blade? I'm like, well, you're not cutting all the way through the piece. So that's a little bit of a different story. So I said, but when you're doing a full cut through, you're ripping boards, you need to have that riving knife in that machine. And I feel way more comfortable using that machine with that riving knife in it. When they're set up right, they are perfect. It is just textbook. It really is. Because it's keeping that piece of wood from pinching the back part of the blade, because the back part of the blade is where the kickback usually is going to occur, because the blade is rotating at that point towards the operator in the back of the blade, and then it's spinning towards you. So I actually show this video in my class when I talk about the table saw. This guy has a bunch of disclaimers in the beginning of it, and I think it's a very valuable video to play in class. And then I also have a bunch of, I have a tabletop that got kicked back on. I have a panel project that a kid did that got kicked back on. And then I think I have another example of something that got kicked back on. And I show all of those in my demonstrations and explain to them why the things happen. It's important. It's important to have those visual aids. And like I said, I show that to them and I pass it around. And then when I go do the demonstration, I bring those with me and show how that happened.
Here it is right here.
There's a guy.
This is it right here.
This is scary.
Look at that.
Yeah. There's a guy, Blacktail Studios, and he did a whole series of videos with like the ballistic gel hand and all that, and it shows slow motion. And he's got a lot of good ones where he showed, I think he stuck one in the jointer, and and you can see what it does and like the ripple that goes through it. It just mangles stuff, but it's pretty realistic.
I've seen similar videos. I don't know if I've seen that one, but I've seen very similar videos to that.
By the way,
Cam from Blacktail Studio, that's that guy.
Look at that. Now, by the way, he doesn't get hit, but really close. Now, by the way, this is set up to demonstrate it. Am I right? This was
Yeah.
This is the craziest part of the video, is that it is a video where the guy knows that this is going to happen, and still it happened faster and harder than he realized.
Yeah. Well, we kind of talked earlier on, we were talking about, or somebody was mentioning about like scaring the kids. I think it was you, Tim, and things like that. And I think I actually addressed that too, because like I remember when I would teach a table saw, I would show this video, I'd show the one with the foam, I do all that, and I'm like, and somebody raised their hand and like, why are you doing this? You're scaring the hell out of us or whatever. And I was just like, I came up with the analogy. I was like, who wants to drive a car here? And of course, everybody's going to raise their hand. And I'm like, well, you're going to take like driver's ed and everything. They're going to tell you like, you just go through a green light. Don't look any way left or right. People go through red lights, and, like, and they can hurt you really bad. I mean, that stuff is going to happen. You need to know the worst case scenario that's going to happen or else you're just like you're just going to be this happy like idiot, just like, oh, nothing bad's going to happen to me. People do things and make mistakes, and things are beyond your control around you. So you got to always be 100% on guard, knowing everything that could possibly happen. You try to relate. I always try to relate it back to driving, because that's pretty much what a lot of them are just thinking about. I'm going to get my license, getting my permit, and all this kind of stuff. You need to know all the things that are going to happen.
Yeah,
and possible.
That's the approach I take too. The other thing is, I actually had like two, I'll call them baby kickbacks, if you will. Not that they're being forced out of the machine like a bullet, but like just some soft kickbacks. I had a couple this week, and even with the riving knife. And the problem is, they're not controlling that push block through and going all the way through. They're not pushing that all the way through the blade, and they're letting go halfway. And you like to tell the kids, you got to do that. And the next thing you know, these little baby kickbacks happen, and they're like, well, what was that? I'm like, that was a kickback. And they don't realize that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I just want to welcome in Andrew is in the house. Andrew teaches metal shop in Rockland County, I guess. Rockland County? Not Rockland, New York, but maybe, I don't know. But anyway, he's kind of in the Hudson Valley. How you doing, Andrew?
No, I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, good. I'm in my workshop.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm good. I teach in Rockland County. Safety stuff, you try and scare them. I know I just like popped on last minute.
That's
I just
okay.
remembered, just put my kids to bed. So,
That's all right.
But yeah, no, good idea so far. I like the car analogy.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them are just like, why are we doing this? I'm like, because you can die. Plain and simple. Like welding, I don't know why half of you guys are in here in welding. Like, it's cold, it's dangerous, it's unforgiving. When you make a mistake, you can't unmistake it.
True. True.
So yeah.
Well,
I just figured I'd pop on. I haven't been on.
No, that's good, man. I'm glad you're here. It's kind of getting at the late part of the show, but I think we want to leave time for talking about Saw Stop. And Tim, you triggered not you, but one of your students triggered the Saw Stop this week. And I think also, Kevin, have you had students trigger the Saw Stop as well? So I would like to hear those stories and just talk about Saw Stop for a little bit. Obviously, everybody knows it's kind of like the hero in the sport here. But it's interesting just to know what happened, So, Tim, you want to tell us what happened last week?
Yeah, I had a kid. A lot of the stuff that the kids rip in my class are short pieces. I would say like under 24 inches long pieces. And this kid, for the first time, was ripping a longer piece, close to 5 feet. And we don't have an outfeed table. Just because of the way the room is configured. And the kid should have had somebody out there catching the workpiece to help hold it and lift it. Well, he didn't use an outfeed stand. And as he pushed the board through, now all the weight was being suspended off the table.
Oh,
well, the board rolled, the push stick he was using rolled, and it went down and around. And then we kind of figured either it had to be his middle finger or his ring finger touched the side of the blade. We don't know exactly, but he rolled the push stick upside down, and his hand touched the side of the blade, which triggered it. So the funny thing was, I actually wasn't watching him. Like, I knew he was on the saw. I could tell the saw was running. I heard the board hit the floor, but something sounded different about it, and I didn't think anything of it because we haven't had a Saw Stop trip in like 3 years. And
a key component of every
next thing you know, I turn around and the kids are like, the saw won't go on, table saw won't go on. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, it's blinking all these lights. I said, oh, I must have tripped the sensor. And I'm looking at the kid's hand. I'm flipping his hand, looking around. And there's no blood, no nothing. And I just really tried to digest and dissect what happened. And my only the only thing I can figure out is that when he lifted up that board or that push stick to try to put pressure on it, it flipped his hand over, and then touched the blade.
Wow.
Super lucky. I told the kid it was an accident, not responsible for the blade, not responsible for this cartridge. For a while, we were having kids setting off the saw stop. This is going 5 years now. Setting the saw stop up purposely, so if they did that, then they'd be responsible. I said, listen, you're not responsible for this. This is an accident. This is why we have the machine. This is why we teach you this. We assume it works. We know it works. It saved your finger potentially. And the kid was really nervous, but I said, just text your mom, let her know, tell her she'll hear from me later. I said, just, you're fine. And I'm like, I'm not mad. Just if you tell the kids you're not mad at them, their whole attitude changes. And
yeah,
in that case, just being repetitive, just being very professional with them. Don't scream and holler. And the next day, the kid came in and he goes, I really appreciate you emailing my mom, letting her know what happened. And he goes, I just want to let you know how professional you were with, trying to figure out what happened. So it was nice.
Tim, I like your story, and I want to highlight something you said, which is that, it took me a long time to figure this out, but now this is just automatic policy. But it reminds me, don't let the kid think they're in trouble. If you calm them down and you let them know just to tell the truth, because it's like you said, you have to launch like an investigation. Like, they triggered the thing, but you're not sure what happened. And if you're trying to keep people safe, you have to figure out what they did, but they got to tell you the truth, which they don't want to do. So, because they think they're in trouble. So they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell them. But if you let the kid calm down, not that I'm giving out advice here. I'm highlighting something that you said, which I think is important, is that let the kid calm down and let them know you're not in trouble. Just tell me what happened. And once you do that, they really do come clean. And then you think, oh, I see. I know how I could prevent this. And you come up with an invention. I remember Kwit used to have all these cool like safety shields and all kinds of jigs on the router and stuff. I mean, Kevin used to come up with the coolest stuff. And it's those, luckily hopefully it doesn't take like a big failure, but those failures then teach us how to, make better jigs and better safety equipment. I mean, SawStop is kind of a result. It's like the badass version of a shop teacher make a change, pretty cool. Kevin, what stories you got for us about the SawStop?
The one in West New York that I kind of witnessed, because I was standing right there with the kid. And like Tim was saying, it was that SawStop blade guard. It's kind of like the riving knife with the blade guard sitting on top of it and everything. So everything's real tight together there. They were cutting, it was just, cutting a box top. So the off cut was only like a 1/4 inch piece that was coming off to the left of the blade. He made his cut, used the push block. Everything was great. He hits the off switch, with his leg. So I tell them, you can just hit the off switch with your leg. And almost in the same motion, he went and grabbed that off cut on the left side of the blade, right? It was stuck where the guard was. It kind of stays there. And, and you always tell him, wait till the blade stops, wait till the blade stops. Well, in his mind, I guess he hit the switch, and then he went and reached for it, and the blade was spinning down already, but it was still moving, and just, grazed the side of his finger. And it clicked, and it's like if you it was almost like I didn't know if it went off because the blade was already slowing down. The blade had they had already hit the stop switch, so the blade was probably already only like a 25% speed or something like that, and it didn't drop. It stayed up, but once I opened everything up, it's like just a little bit of the teeth were in there, and I was actually able to just pull the cartridge off the blade, which if it was like a real trigger, you cannot pull those two pieces apart because they're embedded, there's that force just goes into that soft aluminum. But so it was something I saw exactly what happened there. I had one trigger in last year in Northern Burlington even though he talked to it was one of those things where the kid came up to me like, the saw's not working. I'm like, okay. So I'm looking around, trying to figure everything out. Same thing, that the blade didn't drop like it does in the video. It was still up, but I was getting all these error messages, and I opened the whole thing up, and then just the tip of the teeth were in the cartridge. So there was a trip. Nobody wanted to admit to anything, like who used the saw last, anything like that. But it seems like it was like the same thing. Somebody probably shut it off and then somehow grazed it or something. But nobody, talked to everybody. I'm like, guys, listen, I don't care. You're not in trouble. And did that whole thing, that whole talk. I sat everybody down. It's like, I'm trying to learn, trying to make you safer. What happened? What can I do? What can I do better as a teacher, so this doesn't happen, or put you in that position again. That one, nothing ever came out of that one. So
that blade is being monitored from as soon as that switch is pulled to the moment that actual light goes back solid green. That blade is being monitored. So when you send that cartridge out to SawStop to get analyzed or an analysis on that, they'll tell you what the RPM was, how long that saw was running for, because it records the last instance of that machine running.
Wow.
And it'll tell you if it was during startup, during coast down, during full RPM. Like, they know all of that information.
Wow.
Wow.
I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Something interesting that I learned from just you guys talking about that is that I didn't realize that once you turn it off, the trigger mechanism, the brake, is not off until it stops spinning. Is that right? Okay, I don't think that's obvious in their advertising. I didn't realize that, which makes perfect sense because you turn it off, it's still spinning. That still could hurt you for sure.
A lot of people get hurt during coast down. That's when a lot of people were getting cut too, during the coast down part.
Interesting.
And I've had trips, like Kevin said, during coast down, and kids touching the blade. Then this was going years back, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they don't get engaged into the aluminum pawl, or they just barely touch the aluminum pawl, but they did trip. It's amazing how that technology works, but you got to go through the process of turning it off, resetting it, going through the whole thing. And the worst part is when there's a trip,
you can't get it apart.
Was that?
You can't get it out.
You can't get it out. Because by the time the brake is engaged and the blade is engaged, it's impossible to get those two out. You got to pry them. Oh, it's nasty.
Interesting. Anybody else want to add anything on the SawStop?
Well, I've had a lot of accidentals with the aluminum, cross cuts. They accidentally don't set it right and they're holding on to the aluminum and trip it that way. I've turned the SawStop off and running wet wood, and I've had that just drop out of sight as you're running wet wood.
Oh, is that because now it's conductive and you're part of the circuit? Is that right?
Yeah, you can bypass the SawStop function so you can cut wet lumber, because if you're trying to cut wet lumber with it on, it triggers it.
So what do you do? Is there like a key that you turn?
Yeah. So you bypass it, and then if you overload that, it just turns itself off and it drops.
There's a whole procedure you go through. You got to turn the key, pull the switch, let the key register, the lights flicker. And there's a whole thing that you got to go through. It's a lot to bypass the system, but you can do it. And as soon as you turn that saw off, the system reactivates.
And
so it's not like turning it off; it stays off. It turns it off. It's one instance.
And what about knowing? Oh, go ahead.
You can actually test it. Like if you're not sure of the piece of material that you're using, you can just touch it while the blade's not moving, and it'll the light will flash red. I didn't know that. I learned that last year. Guy came to repair some other machines in my shop, and he's like, did you know you can do this? So if you're ever unsure about something or whatever, or unsure about, is the blade I put in compatible, if you with the saw off, you just touch one of those carbide teeth or anything like that, and then when that thing clicks red, it's like it's registering that
And that's one of the things I show them during the demo as well. You know, I turn the one switch on to have the computer do all its self checks, and I'm like, watch, see how it's flashing? It's sensing my flesh. Like, so they get that visual without it running. So, you know, and then I just barely touch a tooth and look, it's triggering it. So like they get that visual without the harm.
Yeah,
I do
wow,
the same
that's pretty
thing.
cool. I wanted to ask Noah, on the job site, do you use a table saw, or do you do how do you guys cut the wood over there?
So I mean, everything we're like, we have a job site saw stop, but everything is, you know, you don't use on a house. You're not using table saw that much.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I still, you know, the interesting thing I had never used, and I didn't know that about the touching the blade to the thing. I triggered a saw stop with wet lumber, like when I first started at the shop, because I'd never used a saw stop before. I'd always just used whatever Powermatic, Grizzly, table saws. So it's nice having that, but I did not know that you could touch that. That's pretty cool. It's good to know. We just got a new one with the grant, and the guy from Saw Stop is supposed to come and trigger a blade for us.
Oh, cool.
With the hot dog thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, the hot dog thing.
At one of the trade shows, I said, can I do that? And I'm like, can I use my finger? They're like, no. You have to use the hot dog.
That's what I asked. The guy was called and was like, do it.
I was going to touch
like,
the side of the blade. You don't know where the teeth are, but just touch the side of the blade.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I asked the guy that. And he was like, no, we can't. Of course we couldn't do that. I'm like, really? Y'all don't believe in your system?
Yeah, I know. That's what I said.
This is so shop teacher. Can I touch it?
Because I know my students are going to ask the second the guy shows up.
What's
the students are going to ask the exact same thing when the guy shows up.
Right. You guys are funny. All right. Well,
try it on your own. Spend the money on a new blade and cartridge.
$200 later.
You first.
Oh man. All right. Well, this is pretty good. You know, it seems like this topic is really big. I mean, we could go deeper on this. Geez, we didn't even talk about welding safety, electricity. You know, I had some stories about electric cars, you know, wiring in series back to itself. Like I had a kid wire what I thought he understood the circuit to wire it in series. He actually thought I meant a loop back to itself. So two enormously powerful batteries were basically looped back to themselves. Well, when he connected that loop, the terminal vaporized like in his face. And he wasn't wearing glasses, and he's in the car like enclosure, and it luckily nothing happened to him. It just went poof, and you know the thing is, these things happen so fast. He just backed away like this. He looked like this, and I saw a kid backing away from a car, and he looked like he saw a ghost. And I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" You know, type of thing. Like, "Are you all right?" And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, I better get over there. So I get over there and he's fine. And I saw what he did. And he basically like shorted out the batteries, but with huge, you know, for an electric car, like 2-aught size cables, which are like 3-4 times the size of your regular jumper cables. Anyway, long story short, you know, electrical safety is a big thing. So I think we should run another one of these theme nights, maybe like a couple of months from now or whatever, maybe towards the end of the year, or maybe just at least once a year, because it's a big topic. We didn't even cover half of the stuff out there, you know, but I really appreciate everybody coming in tonight. You know, it's getting late, so we'll kind of wrap it up. Greg, thanks for bringing all those people in from the West Coast.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. I always enjoy it, and I'm hoping I can try to get some more of my instructors to attend.
No problem.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Next week, we're having Tay from Harbor Freight on, and we're going to have some Harbor Freight winners in the house. Luckily, I was a finalist this year, but I didn't make it into the winner circle. But it's pretty amazing process. I would say definitely go for it. Kevin, have you applied yet? I was not doing it, and I was like, I don't want to do it, because it's like a lot of work. I think it's worth it. So you might want to see next week's episode. Tay, the director of the program, is going to be there, and we used for the Taylorville build out west, mid of the country. That was all from Harbor Freight money that he had won from his thing. So that's next week. And thanks for coming in. Geez, Nick brought in like 3-4 new people, right? That was cool. Thanks a lot. And Nick, that was Logan and Adam. Who else?
Jim.
Oh, and Jimmy DeResta. Jeez. Oh my God. That was cool that Jimmy came in on the safety episode. That was awesome. He's got his ladder story. I could totally understand these black ants jumping all over him. That's insane. Like, and if it was West Coast, it would be like red ants, right? Right? Jeez, you got scorpions.
No, we don't have any we don't have any insects out here. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Freaking California, man. We don't even have water.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. I used to stay at a friend's house, and there was scorpions in his house, and he would be like, no big deal. He'd just pick it up and throw it outside.
Yeah, we really don't get much. When I go to the Midwest, I'm like, you actually have to clean your windshield and keep like washer fluid in your car and stuff. Like we don't have to do that here. So
that's true. Yeah, when I drove across the country this summer, man, the front of my car, all bugs. I was like a caked on layer of bugs. It was insane. Anyway, so we're wrapping it up. Noah, thanks for coming in. How's your house build going? Is everything okay?
No, we start that January 2nd, 3rd, something like that.
Okay.
We're prepping for it. We're prepping for it now, but that's all offsite. It's going to be at the high school. It's not a big change.
We want some updates. And Duke, thanks for joining in as always. Oh, and I got you guys. I got some hats for the regulars out there, and anybody who's in the room tonight. Just give me your, text me your address and your, and I've got a shirt size as well. I could send you guys a hat.
Hey, Ron, let me present. Can I present something real quick?
Yeah.
I made this. I made this sign like 2 days ago. It's funny.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm talking about it.
And just while he's getting it ready, Andrew, thanks for coming in. I know you're holding down the fort in the Rockland County, doing the welding gig. It's awesome. I always hear good things about the school he's at. Oh yeah, fail safe. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
That is absolutely my favorite, like, engineering concept. What a cool thing, man. Thanks for showing that. It's funny. The jet fighters, when they this is the example I always give to the kids that blow their minds. When the jet fighter comes in and grabs that on the aircraft carrier and grabs that cable, they full throttle it. And the reason why is they go full throttle is because if that cable snaps, there's no time to put the pedal down or the throttle up. So they just keep it up and then hold against that thing. But if it snaps, they just take off and they don't fall into the ocean. So that's it's like a failure to, like, let's say they snap the cable. It's like, oh, they failed to land. They broke the cable, but they're not dead. So you fail to accomplish your goal, but you're safe, so fail safe. There's a lot of good examples out there. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks a lot for coming in. I'll hit stop on the recording and Shop Class Podcast. Andrew, thanks for coming in. Look at this. What, Andrew, why do you look like you're about to take on something crazy? Like, he looks like he's about to do a night mission. Let me end the recording here. Shop Class Podcast. Awesome. All right.